Okay, good morning to everyone. So we are going to start the lecture. Actually, today the both sessions, morning session like session 1 and 2, uh, will be covered by me and Dr. Dayanand. Actually, we have met in previous sessions, several sessions, and talk about some aspects of research, mainly qualitative research, the initial stage of conducting research. Now we have come to some latter parts of research where uh, the tasks of data analysis are taken in. Um, Maybe some other areas must have been already covered by others, especially data analysis. Today, we are going to talk about two major areas mainly, but in so elaborative manner. That there are the four sections will be covered, which have been included in chapter 13, 14, 22, and 23. To start that, we'll take chapter 13, that is the content analysis. Content analysis. As the word suggests, we are going to analyze content. Where do you see these contents there? So before analyzing, we need to know where we find these contents. Contents may be found in many sources. It depends on your data collection. Your data collection. Right. Um, Accordingly, like your data may be available in different forms, but to great extent, the contents can be seen either, so irrespective of the medium in which it has been or recorded or available, and these contents can be seen in the document forms and text form, right? So therefore we are trying to, it does not mean that the numbers or any other even numbers are there, but our analysis approach would be text form. um, the famous sometimes, so you may have come across some content analysis pertaining to your field, because when it comes to social sciences, contents may be in different forms, especially in social sciences, the how people live and how people engage in production, or how people interact with each other in the society. Likewise, so many different forms would be there. But in the case of accounting and finance, so you guys may have seen accounting documents, sometimes mainly publicly available documents, right? Even though it has limited scope, many look at annual reports. When we take annual reports, lots of content analysis have been seen, starting from small number counts, and likewise it goes on. So later we will discuss how it could be analyzed in a meaningful manner. Um, so one more thing I must highlight, this content analysis will really serve the purpose of one of the analysis in your research. It's not going to be the entire analysis in any case nowadays, because now technology has altered the spectrum of analysis to a great extent. As a result, this would be only one mode of analysis. Then the quantifies it quantifies the content in terms of predetermined categories. Like later we will be discussing what would be the categories, but you have to decide in advance what are you going to analyze. So whether you are going to analyze them into themes, whether you are going to analyze maybe uh, uh, in the form of paragraphs, or maybe sentences, or maybe rhetorics. It depends. Sometimes rhetoric analysis is can be considered as a kind of new area. For example, in um, like in general management of an organization, or maybe in a working environment in a factory, um, different rhetorics may be used in so day-to-day life in the sense like in the organizational operations. Those rhetorics may be different from the other terms or the words that we used in other areas. So in that case, your content is going to be captured through discussion, interviews, or maybe observations. Then you capture rhetorics or through the words, and that would be your analysis. So therefore, what matters initially is the your uh, um, predetermination or basic and like conclusion about what you are going to analyze, whether it is word, numbers, or pictures, symbols, or rhetorics like this. Um, it is said, like so whatever the terms we use here, because this presentation is based on the textbook given to you. So therefore, some of the things which had been included in the book, so like can be even challenged because things may have changed. But by and large, content analysis is considered to be a systematic and a reliable one. The main reason for this thing, why it is said to be systematic, because the content available in different forms are going to be analyzed based on predetermined categories. So therefore, analysis can be done in a systematic way, because you know the depth or the scope, then you know in a way the sample within which you are going to carry out this analysis. So therefore, it is systematic, and it is said to be reliable as well. But again, you can question reliability, depends on the authenticity of the documents or the information that you are going to analyze. So if as long as your documents, your information is authentic one, your analysis can be a reliable one. Usually it is used for quantitative research, but not limited. It depends. Uh, in the initial stage, in the management research, the content analysis was used in through quantitative research. That is the reason why textbook says that yes, usually it is for quantitative. Then you may ask, how come? Because in quantitative um, approach and quantitative analysis, so basically what you learn about quantitative research is totally different. Yes, it does not mean that this is a quantitative methodology, but the quantitative, even within quantitative methodologies, some types of analysis can be done through quantitative analysis. For example, it does not mean that the hypothesis testing, right? But rather, um, texts and documents or words or any other things are quantitatively analyzed, arranged, and analyzed. The usefulness may be questioned to some extent. Usefulness, the content usefulness of the content analysis. For example, the traditional way of analyzing annual reports, in the initial stage, you may have seen in some research the number of words, word count was taken as a content analysis. The early stages, it had a kind of a bearing. Why? Some reporting perspectives could be presented by the number, so number of words. For example, when we take CSR, corporate governance, in the initial stages, researchers look at the number of words used in reporting CSR. Higher the number, whether there is any tendency, increasing tendency or decreasing tendency in using numbers or words, sentences, number of pages allocated for that particular area, it highlights the importance of um, that particular area. For example, in an annual report, I'm just giving you a general idea, right? Don't limit it to this. In an annual report, or maybe in any document or report or a book that contains 1000 pages. If 500 pages have been allocated, or 200, 300 pages allocated for a particular subject or a particular topic or area, what does it mean? Assuming that there are 25 aspects which have been discussed in this particular book, but one particular aspect has been allocated 400 pages. It means that very high significance has been given to that particular area. So that is how early researchers concluded or used content analysis by using number of pages, number of pictorials, graphs, paragraphs, sentences likewise. Now you can understand why and how it happens. But the important nowadays, um, I mean, even the number, for example, even the number of words for CSR or any other reporting aspects has been increasing. Can we conclude that that is a kind of like organization which is good in that particular area? It would be a little bit questionable, because nowadays you can use any number of words, any number of the pictures, any number of graphics and all these things, and you can decorate and you can present the information in that way or this way, showing that you are doing pretty much good job in that particular area. But it would not be the case. So that's why I just told you the content analysis serves on a limited purpose. Yes, apparently you may argue, yes, okay, some prominence has been given because there is a tendency in increasing the number. I hope you got the idea. uh, but when it comes to the qualitative research, we do not simply analyze and interpret the quantity, whether it is increasing, decreasing, constant in how it has changed. So when it comes to qualitative, actually we go further, how and why this is happening. What does this content talk about? Interpretativism would be taken in. So therefore, a content analysis can be taken to uh, qualitative research. But when it comes to, so I mean, the latter parts we will be discussing in the area where and how documents are used or can be used as an evidence or for your research. Then different, this is different from semiotic and ethnographic content analysis. When it comes to, so the semiotic and ethnographic content analysis, they are mainly in qualitative research, not in quantitative methodologies. Later we will be discussing, but just to give you some idea, semiotic analysis deals with analysis of symbols or signs. um, Maybe in an organization, right? In an organization, you may have seen some signs, so directions or maybe instructions. So they are not written in words. Symbols are they. Once you see a particular symbol, you know, okay, what it means. So accordingly, you either comply with that, or you may, if you are not really in agreement with that particular symbol, you may do something against, right? That is symbolism, right? So semiotic analysis. And in ethnographic content analysis, also already you have learned about ethnographic research, where the behaviors of identified different groups or the ethnicities, um, how they behave, how they react, how they carry out things as a particular or separately identified a group or ethnographic group. So that is ethnographic analysis. If you have some data pertaining to ethnography or semiotic, that analysis would be mainly or qualitative. Um, yes, Dr. Dananda, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, can I share my one document?
Yes. Yes, now you can share.
Yeah. I hope that you all can see this. This is a paper done by Alawathage and Vikramasinghe. It's about micro accountability and biopolitics. They are talking about microfinance. For that, of course, they have used what has really explained by Dr. Anil, the content analysis. These two pictures communicate, the culture of microfinance, women focus. And when you look at this record, even it indicates some, you know, content analysis, even though they are not counting words. So these are classic example for ethnographic and the symbol analysis. You want to add anything?
Yeah, so just referring to them, adding to the same picture. So it's a very clear contrast between these two pictures, like here, so some writing. So these writings, so the researcher must have discussed about these things. So how they maintain records about their financial transaction, maybe small borrowing. This particular paper is on microfinance, and at the same time, so as Dr. Dayananda mentioned, just look at this the picture in the traditional quantitative mode of analysis. What can we say about this particular picture in content analysis? We can say that number of people, maybe 1 2 3 4 5 12. Again, we can say that they are female, right, by looking at the dress. Hmm? But in a qualitative research, you would be able to say something more than that, right? You can talk something about the leadership. It looks like, so this is at a glance. Now I just saw this picture. So my interpretation, it looks like that this lady, the lady who is standing, looks to be the leader among other ladies, would be. Maybe wrong, but by looking at the picture, so that is the content analysis, or semi like by looking at this. Hmm? And at the same time, you see all the other ladies are just sitting in a like one room. It looks like they are not from the same house, right? It can't be, because all the ladies are at more or less the same age. Therefore could be, because the paper is about microfinance, could be from surrounding houses or your neighbors, friends. So it shows you a kind of relationship, because in a traditional, or I don't like to use the traditional, maybe in a village still. So you see big difference between village and towns. If you go to the village, still nowadays there is a kind of very strong convivial relationships among our people. So this convivial relationship can be used by other people to carry out some businesses like microfinance. Why I just remembered this, like pop up in my mind, couple of not yes couple of weeks ago, I heard about a story of what do you call this pyramid business. So you guys must have already heard about this thing. In the pyramid business, it's a financial racket. So you collect money. So those organized people collect money through this relationship, where you are joined to the business, then you need to find some other people, maybe 3 or 5, something like it goes like a tree structure. So these things are possible because of the relationship that you have, because you are very good at maintaining these convivial relationships in the village especially. Therefore you are sold a particular ticket or whatever you pay, say 10,000, 20,000, because nowadays this is quickly spreading. Be aware of these things. So that additional information for you. And a couple of weeks ago I heard about this thing, and then I passed the information to authorities as well. Just look at, then they said no, we are helpless. Why? Because these people are doing this racket covering to a particular product, so fake product. So there is no product at all. So present the recent business is about selling of hotel packages. So many people get involved in. People also think of the ways of just earning quick money. They pay 20,000 or 30,000, 50,000, and once you pay 20,000, you try to recover it from others. It could be recovered from these through this particular relationship. Anyway, though I just took loan a little bit more time, so that might help you be aware of these things. Yes. Then
Okay.
if okay.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Dr. Dhananjay, so whenever you have to add something, just please stop me, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So need not to worry that much about these definitions. Since the textbook has given, we'll take one important aspects of this definition. It is said to be objective, systematic, and quantitative description. Quantitative description is used of the manifest content of communication. Actually, it is a manifestation of this content is a manifestation of the communication. So refer to that particular record and the that particular picture. It's a communication. It communicates you something. It is not what that particular lady communicates. The picture communicates to you something, as I explained you, interpreted. And objective systematic identification of specified characteristics. So specified characteristics may have been seen in that particular records. So amount of money borrowed, date on which it was borrowed, and the date on which it was settled. So therefore, that is a specified characteristic. And the content analysis can be related to the research questions. And actually, it depends on the research question. Analysis is carried out by referring to the research question. So must be your, if your research questions, therefore, um, research questions have a great role to play in that regard. Accordingly, questions must be very clear. If the questions are not clear, then your analysis, so you may do an analysis, but it does not relate to your research question. That is why in the research supervision sessions, we were iterating and asking you to be clear on your research question. Some of you guys came with a research topic, saying that, oh, I'm going to do this particular research, would that be okay? But when we ask about what is the research question behind this thing, why do you do this thing, Hmm? what are you going to achieve from this thing, then many of you were unanswerable. So you didn't know the question. So what really matters behind um, these analyses are the research question. And then if you know the questions well, so clearly specified, then you know what dimensions of the text would be quantified and analyzed and all these things. So very simple form, um, uh, so this is pertaining to the news, the number of issues, coverage, who did it, what and how, so many things you can ask. Then how many different views represented? And what is selected for inclusion? If you know the research question very well, you know that what should be included in your content analysis, right? Suppose that your research question is something related to reporting aspects. on a longitudinal study. So you need to explore and analyze the data for a longer period of time. So therefore, your main concern is to expand the time horizon of the analysis and rather than other different aspects or interpretation. So therefore, what is to be included should be determined. At the same time, in the content analysis, you need to decide what not to be included by referring to your research question. If your research question does not talk about that, and because the analysis, the scope could be, I mean, in any, I mean, could be at any level. You are not going to do everything. This is what we discuss under doable research. Because when we take a particular research issue, of course, uh, many things can be discussed. But we are not going to do the research for everything. We exclude. If you need to know what is going to be excluded. If it is excluded, that shouldn't be analyzed or included in your content analysis. Then does the amount of coverage change over time? Sometimes, yes. So maybe 2 3 years before, the coverage could have been, or maybe with a limited amount of content, they may have discussed much, or with a very big space, they may have discussed very little. So you can even articulate this, articulate. So pictorial versus texts. So that's why we say in our um, society, so there is a saying that a picture talks 1,000 words. So therefore, then the coverage change over time. In the past, sometimes lots of texts may have been used, 10 pages, 20 pages, but the message passed from these 10 pages can be summarized into two pictures. So therefore, over time, this may have happened over time. This may have happened over time. That is what you need to observe, especially in the field of advertisements. In the field of advertisements, hmm? So they use more powerful uh, pictures now. The video version, right? So like therefore that would be more powerful than texts, because the text you need to read, understand, interpret. Picture also would be different. Some, it depends, but pictures, videos, or motions can be used to pass the bigger messages, or so therefore you need to be aware. So simple idea is, if you do not take into account how this coverage has changed over time and simply try to compare, that might give you misleading information, because by that time in the past that technology wasn't there, or so they could not use it in that way. Then selecting a sample for your content analysis. It also links with your um, research questions as well. So this summary has been given with respect to social research pertaining to mass media, right? What dimensions are possible for random sampling? So here we can take media or dates of publication. But if you just look at to an organization from accounting and finance perspective, what would be so how would you select a sample for this content analysis? But don't limit to great extent publicly. So if you look at from the publicly available sources, annual reports can be taken in what me like basically annual reports, though they are required to be published in 3 different languages. So we take the most commonly available one, maybe in English, maybe over a longer period of time. So that is one. Or maybe interviews, questionnaires. So likewise, are we interviewing employees or managers or any other players when it comes to qualitative research? So would be number of respondents would be limited, but the data analysis or the data collection would be would take different forms, because discussions, it would not be simple simply taking weaves based on standard questions. It goes on one after the other, trying to explore something related to your research question. So therefore um, you need to think of this sample. Or if you are going to access some reports already, maybe the say archives can be also used pertaining to legal um, how to say cases. So lots of archives would be there, but you would take a particular time period
We have to,
owing to the fact that and highlighting the importance.
Anil, we have to speed
For
up little.
example,
Hello.
hello,
We have to
yes,
quick. We have to be
ah,
quick little bit.
yes, yes, there are, okay, okay, I will speed up. So I just would like to highlight one more important fact here. Just recall, I can't remember the year. So when was this forensic audit report released? 2019? 2019, I suppose, yes. So that like, by taking into account the corruption charges and any other things level against officials and politicians, then you are not going to take into account the entire time period, the bond issues which happened specifically during that particular time period. The publication is like limited to that particular time period. Then the sampling media, of course it depends, right? So you can use whatever, like um, the media you like, or media which is much more convenient to the respondees or relevant to your research topic. Then we will sampling dates as well. This has been already explained to you. um, the time period really matters. So because your questions, research questions have been already framed based on this particular time period. So therefore, your data should not cross the boundaries of the time period specified in the question. And then when it comes to specifically data counting, data analysis, and all those things, to some extent, in the past you did it manually, right? What is most highlighted things in movies, also the protagonist and the alternative voices. So example has been given, what is most highlighted, you individually pick up the things, you did it manually. So nowadays there is an option, even in quantitative, qualitative, whatever research, lots of software is available to deal with number of words. The wordsmith is famous or widely used, and another one is also available. Even you can check for new software application. Maxqda is now deals with lots of uh, content analysis areas. So therefore, please go through them. Actually, Max QDA is a free software, freely available. Lots of sessions are also there. Be familiar with those things to analyze your data. Then the coding schedule. So coding is also important, because when you deal with plethora of data, a large number of data, from time to time you can't remember everything, you forget. So therefore better to have a specified coding system, right? It depends on your research. You can use nowadays Excel sheet for this thing, columns, rows, and all these things. Then you can code, you know, this is the aspect I'm going to test. So for that particular aspect, different code, and how much is there, how many items. Likewise, you can first record. Even your literature review can be coded accordingly. Right. This is an example, not hard and fast rule that you need. This is very old one, but you better decide. Now you are very good at designing and um, arranging data. This is what we call in a way data tabulation as well. Think of appropriate headings, codes, and summarize your data. Then this is, don't worry, sometimes you may be afraid of just doing all these things in your research. So here, this is the learning session, so therefore we talk about everything. Not, it does not mean that you are supposed to do all those things when you carry out your content analysis in your research. So coding manual and all those things, um, I don't think that it would be necessary for you guys when you do the research. But if you have any avenues of maintaining these things in the computers, so you can maintain a manual. So manual is a detailed guideline with respect to coding, how it has been taken, because sometimes you may have to use research assistants, but in your case you do not know whether you use assistant. But if assistants are there, you may use, no problem, but mainly research has to be carried out by yourself. So when a manual is there, it is easy for references, even when you come to the conclusion, when you carry out next research, and all those things, very clear guidelines are there. Actually, it is a guidance. Then the portion of a coding manual, so need not to go through this because this is pertaining to a social science, but number of items, if you quickly glance through different aspects, you may understand why the coding is important. So this is pertaining to social research, where violence against the person, so nature of offense, so maybe the social crimes or offenses must have been analyzed in this research. Therefore, violence against person, whether it is sexual offenses, robbery, burglary, likewise different types have been given. For each
This,
type,
Anil,
different coding must be. Yes.
these coding are based on, see, if it is a quantitative research, these
Can you
coding,
speak a bit louder?
uh,
Yeah. Yes.
now,
Please.
what I want to communicate to you is that if it is a quantitative research, all these codings are based on literature. So
Yes.
literature might talk about nature of offense. So thereby you have identified, you can identify what are the keywords or key themes or key categories. So those are the coding. So you can, when you refer to a particular report, particular video clip or whatever, you may count words which is related to violence against the person. So you may count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 likewise. Sexual offenses. So that's how you conduct the content analysis. Again, you can think about that sexual offense against male or female or unknown. So it's a kind of categorization again. Or you can say position news item in the front page, inside, back page, something like that. It will vary. The coding, these are of course categorization. These will vary according to your research topic or the research question or the hypothesis you are going to test. So what I want to communicate to you is that all these coding, whether it is manual or computerized, should be based on your research story or research question and the literature. Okay.
Okay.
Now, for example, if you are going to study the sustainable reporting or integrated reporting, you may refer to the literature and find out the important words or the labels and sentences or phrases. Then, of course, you will look at those phrases and sentences in the annual report and you will count. Annual report 1, annual report 2, annual report 3, likewise. Okay.
Right.
Content analysis is not a difficult one. It's
Yeah.
very easy. It's just counting your coding and analyzing.
Yeah, that's what you need to be a little bit concerned about. Its I mean the limitation of its relevance as well. So relatively it is easy, but be aware of its limitations as well. And coming on this, the same case offenses. If someone is interested in, like, if someone has the access to police, there is a common access point called 119, right? So in 119, all the calls must have been recorded, if we have access to these things, or if there's any way of just getting data, so this kind of coding system can be easily developed, or the content analysis can be carried out easily. So instead of referring to the books, it depends. So now you see how things change over time. Then these are the cautions, warnings, pitfalls when you carry out content analysis. So content analysis, we need to avoid these other things, like in other words, to avoid something, to avoid unnecessary things, you need to make sure that certain things are achieved. What are these certain things that you should make sure to be achieved in content analysis? It should be a discrete dimension. So that is why in the annual reports, whether the discrete dimension means, so highly specified dimension should be there. Whether it is, so we have numbers or words, whether the number, what does it talk about? Numbers or words for CSR, numbers for profits, or words pertaining to related party transaction. Because related party transaction is a big area in annual reports. If you just observe over time, the reporting space allocated for related party transaction has been increasing. Then you simply avoid other section, you go to the related party or the explanation, notes, policies, all those things, even numbers pertaining to related party transaction, within which you take discrete dimension again. So nature of the related party, nature of the transaction, identification of the party, amount involved, because it happens, it goes both ways. When there's a related party, it is not one-way transaction. You cash flows and resources flow that way, back and forth. It happens. Then you should not confuse, because finally end result, so there wouldn't be any balance either payable or receivable, but throughout the year both parties may have done millions of transactions that way, this way, and finally settle. When you look at the balance sheet, nothing would be there. Then you may conclude that no related party transaction, because most of the related party transactions may have transferred wealth to some, we do not know, so I'm just telling you. But so increasing importance is there. If you are interested in, you can think of many research topics even in related party. There could be any other areas. So Diana sir, if you remember something or just recall something, please mention about any other possible aspects of these pitfalls. Then
It's okay. These are the pitfalls, and we have to be careful on these areas.
yes, yes. So
Okay.
yeah, please.
Yes, shall we continue?
Yeah, sure. So that is the thing. Basically, you need to make sure that we have assured, or we would achieve these targets. So therefore, these contents would be mutually exclusive. Categories should not really contradict with each other, and the clear instructions must be there, like when you collect and analyze data. So as long as you do this thing, actually content analysis would serve a kind of purpose, even though it has kind of limitations. But if you have any question, you can ask before we move on to the second part, that is the secondary data analysis. Right. Maybe if not, we can continue. Few more things. Simple comparison, uh, just for understanding purposes only. Don't think too much about it. Actually, advantages are not limited to these advantages, but from a very general point of view, content analysis transparency is seen. Why? Because you use high authentic and publicly available data and analyze. So therefore, transparency is maintained whenever, for example, if you say that in an annual report pertaining to related party transaction, this is how it has evolved over time, over a period of 5 years. So of course, when you take these annual reports of that particular company or maybe of the companies that you have referred over 5 years period, we can check it. Verifiability is also there, that is openly available to others, then the transparency is maintained. Otherwise, you say that you analyze something, discussions, reports, and all these things. If you can't produce these reports, transparency would be an issue, because in a content analysis, transparency really matters. Then ease of longitudinal analysis. So longitudinal analysis, that is really to carry out longitudinal analysis, content analysis would help you. And unobstructiveness is another characteristic of content analysis, because no obstruction will come. So unlike in any interview, discussion, interpretation, and all those things, somewhere down the line, obstructions may come in. Just recall what Dr. Dayananda showed you, a picture, the picture and the textbook. When you talk about more and more, additional information may come in. So therefore, the obstruction may come in. Therefore, so like if so in the research, but for the as far as the content analysis, if you are going to interpret the pictures, then you have the pictures only. You do not go beyond that. If you are going to analyze what is written in their day-to-day books, records about their financial transaction, no one would like obstruct that. That means you. It does not mean that the individual come and obstruct. It means that additional information may not obstruct you. Unobstructiveness is there, and the flexibility means, so since plethora of data is there, different aspects, the dimension are there, you can think of how it should be arranged for your data purposes. For example, if you look at the central bank data, what do you call, it is not really repository. So they have some kind of data bank, databases are there. If you go to central bank databases, data may be available from mainly 1950 to present. So it does not mean that you have to analyze all, but you have the flexibility of considering this or that. And
Another way is
yeah,
here, Anil, you can talk the other way around also.
yeah,
Suppose you predetermine certain coding and you are looking at certain say variables or the concepts. Now, when you analyze the particular document, you may see something else. Then you know that what is there is not matching with your research question or the hypothesis. Then, of course, there is a possibility of reformulating, redesigning, readjusting your hypothesis or the research questions. So in that way also you can consider the flexibility, not only the options, but also the other way around. Okay.
I hope that the idea is clear to you. What Dr. Dayananda says is that, so otherwise you might get like misunderstood when we say unobstructiveness is there, like so it is rigid. No, it is not the rigidness. Like once we frame or scope out our research, so that can be analyzed without having any trouble. But what Dr. Dayananda highlights here, so addition is there. What is it? When you carry out this particular analysis, additional aspects or dimension you may see. So as a result, so again you can redefine your the objectives and the scope of data analysis, and it can be brought up to a new level. So that is always there in qualitative research. Remember that. That is why sometimes we say in qualitative research, data collection and data analysis will not end at somewhere down the line as we explain this thing in quantitative analysis. Quantitative analysis, once you have collected data, so that's it. You have a set of data, you analyze, and in that way, this way, if there is a content analysis, that's it. But in the qualitative analysis, if you go for a content analysis, it does not limit to that. So any additional dimension arising from that can be taken into the consideration. So that is what Dr. Dayananda highlight, because that is very, very important in qualitative research studies. And just for the knowledge purposes, some disadvantages also highlighted. Um, Maybe, of course, it has both practical relevance and your examination purposes as well. The questions of authenticity, credibility, and representativeness of documents has to be very clearly identified. Otherwise, if you have done a fantastic analysis based on unauthenticated document, then your research findings outcome cannot be considered as a strong one, because then anybody can say anything. Hmm? The authenticity, so genuineness of your documents or the evidence are really important. That's what, so later we will be discussing in the latter part how the authenticity, credibility of these documents can be checked in the latter part of this today's lecture, when we talk about using documents as an evidence of the data. Then the interpretation by coders. So when we code, some data may be interpreted by on your own way. It shouldn't be. For example, um, so you can interpret if you follow the interpretativism and your data analysis is interpretativism. Once you have coded, for example, if that is age or maybe the level of income or related party transaction, the nature of the transaction. So what is given in the reports, what has been disclosed in the annual reports, may be differently interpreted by at the time when that is being coded. That is what you got to be very careful. It does not mean that you can't interpret, but when you interpret, interpretation should follow certain guidelines. So your interpretation shouldn't change from time to time. Then invalid inference of manifest content. So sometimes invalid inferences. If you recall that particular picture, so I may infer something about convivial relationship within the community. It does not manifest what I say unless I find some additional evidence in that particular case. Hmm? Because I infer by looking at the picture, convivial relationship must have been there, that those relationships may have been used by the lenders to lend or carry out this microfinance business, but you need to support it. So otherwise, uh, the simple idea about inference is inferences should not be imagination, then it is invalid. Then inability to answer why questions. So sometimes, um, so your content analysis pertaining to why it has happened may not have been analyzed properly because lack of data. So that may not be there in the content analysis. Content analysis says what it is, not why it happens. So that is inability, so like a disadvantage of this thing. When it comes to qualitative research, what most matters is not what, but why and how. Um, and sometimes this is criticized, content analysis is criticized on the ground that that is a theoretical approach. A theoretical means that is a lack of theoretical support. You don't have any theoretical support. You take the content and analyze and present, this is this, that is what it is. So you may have already learned about the importance of the theoretical underpinnings theoretical perspective, especially when it comes to qualitative research, because you need to look at something with the a well explained a path or the way of looking at this thing. Why we discuss about these things, the in different aspects of qualitative research, there could be so many different ways of looking at this thing. That is what we discuss under epistemology. So therefore this epistemological aspect is lost in the content analysis. That is why it is said that content analysis would be a theoretical or something which is lack of theoretical approach. So that's all about the content analysis. Now we will take up.
Can I share one document?
Yes, yes, please.
Uh,
Yes, now you can share it.
wait, wait. I'm just looking at it. Yes. Yeah, yes. This is one survey results from integrated reporting, a research paper. This is results of the content analysis. They have observed, they have really studied 2001, 2011, 2012, likewise the annual reports, and they have searched the words, the chapter for integrated reporting. So thereby they have summarized their data set. For example, banking finance industry. Uh, this is the pattern of integrated reporting. They have started in 2011. Here again, if you go to, so likewise you can, this is a result of content analysis. But uh, this is the summary form: banking, finance, and insurance. All the listed companies, all the beverage, the companies which are in the beverage foods and tobacco. Likewise, they have analyzed. So, any comments on it? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, that's like the good example. So now you get a pictorial view of the content analysis. It's clearly says yes. So by looking at this, this is what like you can compare. This content analysis tells you what is it. So in the case of, for example, bank and finance, so IR reporting has been increasing, right? That is what is happening. 1, 2, 8, 17, 12, 20, the latest year 25. That is what it is. It does not explain you why. Therefore, it gives you an opportunity to carry out another research. Why there is an increase in tendency, especially if you take bank and finance or insurance sector, IR reporting, adaptation of IR is increasing over time. Why is it happening? So lots of
Ba-
research questions can be raised. So think of in that way, then it is easy for you to think of different aspects of or the usefulness of
ba-
content analysis.
based on that, they what they have concluded is they have concluded that integrated reporting in Sri Lanka in maturity stage.
Mm,
Maturity. I don't know the word. I didn't read the paper,
yeah.
but it's not the introduction stage. It's not the growth. Somewhat really, we are matured in this area even.
Mm.
I think that is the heading of the, when you go to the
Yeah,
heading
just
of
go
the,
back to the previous. It's okay. Previous page, that particular chart.
it's a kind of, manual they have issued, but here you get the, it's, so I have just extracted from manual. Manual means they have developed what do you call integrate reported manual. In that manual, they have really here IR reach in maturity in Sri Lanka. You know, that's what I just want to communicate. Anyway, so that is one thing I just want to share. The other thing is I just want to share with you is that
Yeah, we can upload this research paper to LMS.
it's not a research paper. It's a you know,
document,
a
right?
report manual.
Anyway, so we can, like, if it is not that bulky, you can upload.
Yeah, we can upload.
We'll see.
No problem. Then I took one audit report just to show you. It's about අගරු චෙක්පත් සඳහා මුදල් අය කර ගැනීම සඳහා දේශීය ආදායම් දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවෙන් ගෙන ඇති ක්‍රියාමාර්ග සඳහා විශේෂ විගණන වාර්තාව. Of course, what you can do is this kind of reports you are using to analyze, do the content analysis. For example, if you are going to study the internal control, you may count the words which are relating to weak internal control. If you go to the English one, of course, you can just count words which are relating to you know, weak internal control. So any coding, any theme, any concepts which are relating to internal control really can be count. So you just refer the documents, you count number of words which have mentioned that which are really find in the documents related to weak internal control. Maybe figures more than 2 million, 3 million. So likewise, the content analysis is of course counting the, you know, the coding what you have uh, identified based on your research question. So thereby you can study all the uh, audit reports maybe from 2010 to 2020. Then your study is not limited to particular shorter period. Your study would expand into, you know, a longer period, so which may have, you know, adding value to your research area. Anything you want to? I think that's what I just want to communicate.
That's quite, yeah, that's all right. So it gives you, I suppose, very clear idea and very illustrative idea. Then you can understand. So the scope of content analysis and limitation of content analysis as well. And nevertheless, like you may think of Neve ways of carrying out the content analysis as well. There's no hard and fast rule that these are the only ways of doing this thing. What we explained you. So as of now, these are the common ways of doing it. If you introduce new way of analyzing, you need to explain what it is. That is quite possible, especially in qualitative research. Qualitative research, the advantage of qualitative research is that um, anything new, even anything new can be introduced. Actually, you would gain this knowledge if you read more research papers and engage in reading. Yes, if you have any question, you can ask now. It looks like no question. So do you see anything in the chat box? No. In the chat box also there are no questions, but feel free to ask questions if you have. Then shall we move to the secondary data analysis? Okay. Then I'll quickly take you through this. After that, we'll have a short break for a few minutes before starting the other session. Then the secondary analysis and official statistics. Of course, this has a relevance in your research. It depends whether you collect primary data or secondary data. Actually, secondary data analysis goes along with secondary data, right? So secondary analysis is done on secondary data. So that is the theoretical explanation about secondary data analysis, how it is analyzed will depend on your research methodology. But we believe that you have some idea about secondary data. Secondary data is not data that is captured directly by you or your like agents or I mean any other sources attached to you. So you capture it, collect it directly from its source is primary. If data is data which has been already gathered or documented or maintained in archives, but you access to that one, that is secondary data. For example, about profitability or management functions, how budgeting takes place in an organization. You go to an organization and observe how it happens. You may sit with board of directors and observe what is happening in a board. You may interview employees, directors. Then whatever data you collect uh, and how they are going to be documented, that would be your primary data. Instead, you may take budgets which have been already prepared or any other management control reports or annual reports. So likewise, or maybe statistics prepared by an organizations to with a view to be to submit it to Internal Revenue Department or any other government agent. So the data which has been already collected and captured is for a specific purpose by the collector. That is not you. That is not your purpose. Sometimes that purpose may exactly match with your purpose. But even though it happens, it is secondary because you didn't do it. So there could be so many things, but because you do not know how it was collected, even though the data is pretty much relevant to you, exactly the same analysis that you also want to do, but you do not know how it was uh, done, who did it, for what, like even the tools used for this thing, you do not know. Sometimes these things may have limited some of the aspects of data when you use secondary data. Um, but for research purposes, no matter whether it is primary or secondary, you can carry out your analysis. General advantages, of course, if something is readily available, you need not to put, I mean, additional efforts. You can quickly access. Sometimes you may have to pay some money, but you can save money in the sense, like though you pay some money, if you try to access on your own, it would incur more money than you pay money for secondary reports. You can save lots of time because which has been already collected. As I just told you, census data, central bank data, or maybe annual report or company performance or any other things. If you go and observe on your own, it would take lots of time. Um, and in a way, it is said that it offers high quality data. Why? It has been collected for a given purpose. For example, if it is a report to be submitted to Inland Revenue Department, if the Inland Revenue Department has accepted it, that means it can't be done, I mean, done in a very lousy manner. You need to follow certain guidelines because it is an authenticate document. If you refer to forensic audit report, like data has been gathered in a systematic way. How it has been gathered is already explained. The quality can be like, it depends. It does not mean that always secondary data is high quality. It depends. There is a possibility that it would be high quality data. Given an opportunity for longitudinal the analysis, so when you carry out even the previous example, this IR reporting, so longer period can be taken because the data is available. Then allows subgroups or subset analysis. Sometimes um, in the secondary data may have been prepared for a different purpose, but for your purpose, you can reclassify into different groups and subsets. Mm. For example, um, information or data pertaining to census, to see whether there is a significant discrepancy or ability of purchasing power between rural areas and the urban areas. You are going to use data compiled by Department of Statistics and Census and Statistics. So where with respect to a particular household, different data items may have been collected about their demography, or maybe different sources of income, and so many other different things, each and every. But you do not want to analyze each and every in that way. You summarize them into different subsets. If your objective is to analyze socio-economic and political, then you can categorize them into three baskets, something like that. So that is what always secondary data allows you or gives you the freedom to rearrange for your own purpose, and gives an opportunity for cross-cultural studies. So that is very specific. So when we have secondary data, then you can access the same secondary data from a different context. So as in the case of IR reporting, IR reporting in Sri Lanka, IR reporting in India, IR reporting in China, or IR report in Europe or Western countries, or you can take a cluster of countries, maybe 10 countries from each region, and do this. So you have the report and do a cross cultural or cross section, because a different that section refers to a different culture, especially Asian culture would be different from other cultures. So likewise, allows more time for data analysis, since you do not spend a lot of time for data collection, you have lots of time to analyze. So that is another advantage. It enables the application of reason theory to all data. So since you have large number of data for a longer period of time, the same data may have been tested with all theories then and there. Now you can use Naive theory and analyze and see whether it is relevant and valid for your research questions, and get more value um, from the original. So it does not mean that like the primary and secondary should not be confused with the originality of data. So data is original in the case of secondary data about GDP of Sri Lanka. They take the data from the source about the production, about income, about expenses. Central bank officials deploy their officials and capture data through their mechanism. So the data is original, right? But not primarily taken. Primarily taken by central bank. You are using it as a secondary source. And some concerns are also there. Need to become familiar with how data was collected, coded, and managed. So if you do not know how it was collected and coded, and the tools used, and for what purpose it has been managed, sometimes that might lead to confusion. You might think you may use it for something with the understanding that this is that, but really it is not. Data can be very large and complex. So on one hand, it would be a disadvantage. On the other hand, it is an advantage. But if so, why it is going to be disadvantage or a little bit concern, in secondary databases, it would be huge, thousands, millions of data. But your purpose is to do something very little. Your scope is very limited. So therefore, if you are trying to take something out from a large data archives or data, you need to put lots of effort of filtering them, reclassifying them. It might take longer time. But why I say that is an advantage. So nowadays, so this large number of data repositories can be analyzed by using different techniques, technologies there. what we call big data analysis and dataism. So all those things are possible. So it depends, right? So therefore you can take it as an advantage or disadvantage. The quality of data should never be taken for granted. So you should not like conclude and think that, oh, this is a secondary data, this has been taken originally, so therefore there can't be any uh, um, loopholes in this particular data, and you conclude. So no, that's not the case. Again, you need to check the authenticity, validity, relevance, and all these things. You can't simply take it for granted. The variables important to your analysis might be missing. Sometimes it's a large number of databases and all these things, but the most important point that you are looking for may not be there. So then therefore there is no use of that particular secondary data. For example, I can give you a practical example. I wanted to get some data about mainly the number of people, you know, that the expatriation, right? So Sri Lankans go abroad to find jobs, and again they come back, right? Then I wanted to know exactly. So there is a rough number as of now, how many people are abroad, but like unique number statistic is not there, not given by the Department of Census and Statistics. I wanted to collect data um, about the actual number of Sri Lankans who migrated for jobs and actual number of people who came back after completing that particular job for good. So not for a vacation, they come and settle. So that information is not there in the secondary database available in the Department of Census and Statistics. They have fantastic analysis. If you go to that particular website and databases, you may find number of people, Sri Lankans, who migrated from Sri Lanka every year based on its the demographical information. So many different information, social information. So lots of things are there. Detailed information is there, but that particular information is not there. So therefore, that database is useless for me. And some archives can be used. So data archives ac.uk provide. Some archives can be freely accessed, but some archives you may have to pay money. Lots of information is available nowadays because of the technology. But the problem, I'm not quite sure whether all data can be accessed free of charge. But data archived ac.uk, it's free. Think of other data archives as well. Actually, what I advise you guys to explore the internet, and you may find different data archives. Even about annual reports and all these things, um, instead of formulating or tabulating information from annual reports, data may be available, but limited. That is the problem. If you go to investing.com, in investing.com, investing.com has compiled all the financial information of almost of all listed companies in the world. But according to their formats, according to their importance, some information may be missing, but it depends. So you better go and check whether your purpose is served by that data, then you better use it, no problem. And so these are examples of large data sets suitable for secondary analysis, but not limited. So this has been given, like taken from the textbook. So by the time it was written, nowadays, so there are so many different websites available for you to use it. Then official statistics, to great extent, you can rely them, collected by agencies of state in the course of their businesses. As I just mentioned, from Sri Lankan perspective, Department of Census and Statistics, Central Bank, and Finance Ministry, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So likewise, so you can take even any ministry. So official statistical data, even Ministry of Provincial Council and local authorities, lots of data is available. But the same question is there, whether it is relevant for you or not. And advantages over quantitative data from surveys. So survey, of course, it takes time, as I explained, need not to repeat it. And you need not to react to the responses because that is readily available. Then the cross-sectional, so these things I already explained, and cross-cultural studies can also be done. Simply speaking, official statistics to great extent can be taken as a kind of authentic and reliable data, even though we have some, how to say, instances where when politics involved with officials, some data manipulation can be seen. It does not mean that is the reason why we say that secondary data cannot be taken for granted. If you are interested in how even official data or secondary data or statistics are being manipulated, used for governing, there is a nice article written by Nicholas Ross in 1990. Nicholas Ross, you can search it in the internet, that is freely available. I think I also downloaded from the internet. So name is Nicholas Ross. He has written a very nice article, research article called Governing by Numbers. Governing by Numbers. So it explains how politics intervenes with statistics, numbers for the purpose of governing. Very interesting, very interesting. And the recent example in Sri Lanka, if you recall the recent budgets 2020-21, together with restatement of the budget for 2019, still that the accusation was not rectified by the government. So if you take numbers on the face of it, there are some discrepancies about the uh, uh, budget deficit, about government revenue, income and expenses. So like the real numbers are contradicting with what it was explained and presented in the budget report. Some numbers were rearranged, reinstated for 2019. So kind of manipulation. So argue, like lots of criticism is there that has been manipulated. By that time, government said that no, so there was no manipulation. But when it comes to real data, you see the manipulation sometime. Even 2020, by that time, budget deficit was reinstated as 6 point something. Now I saw a couple of days ago, one news report was there saying that so budget deficit in 2020 has already surpassed 10%. So that is more than 10%. So be careful of these aspects. Then disadvantages, of course, of the official statistics. So these are the disadvantages I explained, including what I told you. It does not reveal everything, maybe a little. That is why it is called tip of the iceberg. And the limitation, influences, manipulations may also be there. And the problem with reliability and validity of official data, you need to check it and validate it, and always question, be concerned about these things, reliability, validity, because otherwise your data analysis would be impaired. So what is this? What is ecological fallacy? Something wrong with secondary data analysis. Some risk is called this. This fallacy deals with the risk. What is it? It is the error of assuming. Error of assuming. Because when we take secondary data report, if you assume that, right, it inferences about individuals can be made from findings relating to aggregate data. So this danger is there. So in research, it is called fallacy. For example, if you take some research or the data pertaining to violence in Sri Lanka. Violence in Sri Lanka. In violence in Sri Lanka, say maybe demographic analysis or maybe age-wise, race or region-wise, assuming that maybe a hypothetical example I'm giving, right? So in that analysis says the large number of violence or domestic violence during that particular time period has occurred in the, say, southern province. So that is, so when you analyze this particular report, that's the analysis report says that. So does it mean that all or people from southern, right, any individual, whoever who comes from southern area is violent than the other person? It's not. So, but if you try to infer, referring to that particular secondary database for analysis, you may infer that that is a fact based on the research. So when you analyze these offenses or violences, so large number, highest rate is, but it does not mean that all or individuals from southern area are violent than others. So even income distribution, it is a fact that so almost 50% of the GDP comes from Western province, right? So does it mean that all the individuals living in Western province earns or gets or contributes 50% to GDP according to their revenue, so compared to others? So individual from other areas, so your contribution is 50%, individual from southern area is always 10%, eastern province is 1. So no, it is not. So that is, so got to be very, very careful when it your inferences would be are going to be related to individuals. So that is what we call ecological fallacy when we use secondary data, because you do not have that information, because you have not interviewed, you have not dealt with these individuals. You have collected information about individuals based, so you are using the data about individuals based on the secondary data analysis, because you don't have the first hand experience about these individuals. So therefore you may wrongly conclude that so this is this, it would be that way or this way. It is not always negative, as I just explained you, the violence and contribution, whatever, positive, negative, whatever, but it is not true. Got to be very careful about this thing. So then as a result, widespread criticism of official statistics and their use has led to their being largely ignored by social research. So sometimes because of these things, data manipulation, governing by numbers, these ecological fallacies may have led for researchers to simply ignore these large databases, because even though that is freely available, they do not serve our purpose. But anyway, um, you have the freedom of using this thing. Of course, we advise and recommend wherever it is possible, you better use the secondary data due to doability and time constraints and all those things. But make sure that reliability and its validity should be checked. Otherwise, it is a bit dangerous. Yes, Dayananda sir. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Anisa.
with that we
Yeah,
can yeah, conclude this part and have a short break. Yes.
yeah, but just to add, you can use documents not only for data analysis, but even to justify your research problem. So,
Yeah.
so everywhere in your research report, you can use the secondary data sources. But mainly, I think here we discuss documents for the research data. Data means the analysis part, I think.
Yeah.
But when you look at certain research questions, maybe you can heavily depends on documents. For example, if you are going to analyze professionalism in budgeting in public sector, of course, you can. What you can do is you can study. You can use past budget speeches and the budget documents and look at the professionalism. Maybe you may talk about the consistency, maybe accuracy, repetitions, the formats, all those, of course, available in the comprehensive budget document. So thereby, in such study, document analysis may be, much more relevant. But as Anil sir told, that if you're going to study certain, say, offenses or some violence, so in that case, I don't think that document analysis is can be used, heavily. So there, of course, you have to talk to people and individual and group of people, etc. So thereby, the usage of documents for your research area depends on the research question. For example, nowadays, in our one of my students, really the same group, they are studying the Golden Key and Promukha Bank story. What has happened? So basically, they are focusing on documents and the videos and maybe secondary, maybe informal data, informal document, formal document, publish different time. So we thought that is the best way of doing that research. So thereby, what I want to communicate to you is that even though there are limitations, whatever the method, whatever the source, there are inherent limitation, but all the suitability of those data set or the documents depends on your research questions and the purpose of your research. Okay.
Yes, I hope that the message is clear to you. Especially when it comes to qualitative research, the use of secondary data is immense. Throughout the research, you can use it. So that is the simple message. But as Dan has explained you, we we are aware of the different dimension aspects and possibilities of using it, because no data, nothing in this world would be perfect. So therefore, better not to expect secondary data or primary data perfect or error free. There is a tendency, error prone is always there when you collect data, tabulate, analyze, and all these things. But these errors or the weaknesses, deficiencies should not materially really diverge the objective of your research. As long as you can guarantee that, you can use it. So simply speaking, secondary data is a very good source of information for you to carry out your research. So that's all for this session. If you have any question, you can ask. If not, we will have Dayananda sir. Shall we have 10 minutes break? Hello.
Okay, we
Dayananda
will
sir.
have 10-minute break.
Huh?
We will have it. No problem. We will have.
Yeah, we'll have it. Oh, so what time is it now? Then, yeah, 45. Then we can start at 10 o'clock. Second session.
Yes.
We'll leave because there is no separate link. So the same link. So just we leave it. But anyway, I will break the recording into two. So since this is going to be 10 minutes break. But if you have any question, you can ask. Any question? It looks like no question. Then we will break for 10 minutes.